Coming up.
A couple of weeks ago, mid-March, we heard from both Darren Anthony and Christian Firth, the two principal owners of GC Strategies, also known as Government of Canada Strategies. Mr. Firth said his reputation had been damaged by false information and what he called an inaccurate report by the AG. I'd like an opportunity for you to respond on how you feel about these particular statements.
Have you, sir, or the current CBSA executives had any contact with Christian Firth or Darren Anthony?
Okay, so this is not the first time that this has happened. It seems unique then that there would be a general COVID fund. Was that unique?
Here's your opportunity to come clean to Canadians and to members of this committee. You, as a representative of the CBSA, why did you mislead the Auditor General?
Appreciate
He ruled
if
on it.
the chair, I'm talking about a different person now, if the chair himself could be a little bit more nonpartisan in how he conducts
Okay,
our
Ms. Khalid, don't bring me into your bun fights, and I will be nonpartisan and conduct the meeting. You're going to continue to disrupt opposition members from asking questions, then I will get involved and make a ruling, as is my job. I'm not just a potted plant up here that's going to watch the clock. But as you get more political and try to cut opposition members from asking legitimate committee questions, I will reinforce their rights as members to ask it.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
First line of questioning will be to the Auditor General team. Anyone can answer it. But a couple of weeks ago, mid-March, we heard from both Darren Anthony and Christian Firth, the two principal owners of GC Strategies, also known as Government of Canada Strategies, who picked apart the findings in the Auditor General's report. Specifically, Mr. Firth said his reputation had been damaged by false information and what he called an inaccurate report by the AG. Quoted, "Virtually everything reported about my company in the media and stated about me and my company has been false." He said his company was paid $11 million for the ArriveCan, disputing the Auditor General's findings that GC Strategies received almost double that, $19 million. He blamed the discrepancy on flaws in the government's financial systems. We then heard from his partner Darren Anthony, and surprisingly, simply parroted everything that his partner had said, didn't even take the time to actually read your report, didn't take the time to read the report of the procurement ombudsman, but had no problem stating that everything was categorically false. Specifically, he said the Auditor General's findings were inaccurate. He says that the report from both AG and procurement ombudsman, which found both serious problems with ArriveCan contracts, were wrong, and admitted again that he had not read the report. So I'm sure this is not the first time the AG team has learned about these particular statements. I'd like an opportunity for you to respond on how you feel about these particular statements.
Thank you for the question. I'll start with the findings. We're confident with the findings that we provided to Parliament in our reports. We have a rigorous audit process to make sure that the facts and information that we provide is accurate. With respect to the estimates, we did provide an estimate in the report around the overall cost, and we identified an amount per contractor. There are some facts that absolutely cannot be disputed. In particular, it is a fact that the contractors were paid the amounts that we listed in our report. I should say that they received at least those amounts. Some contractors received more. What is really at issue is whether or not those amounts should be attributed to the ArriveCan app versus work on another IT project. And this is where the poor record keeping problems by CBSA raise this confusion and leave these open questions. Ultimately, in our report, we mentioned that the poor record keeping led us to have to build up an estimate. We used the CBSA's financial systems, the contracting documents, and other evidence to build up this estimate. It is important to remember that our estimate includes more than what was spent on building the app. It also includes amounts for the implementation, maintenance, and other associated costs. And this is because Parliament asked us to look at all aspects of the ArriveCan app. The shortcomings in the documentation and the weak controls made it very difficult to precisely attribute costs amongst these elements of ArriveCan. But ultimately, any number that is provided, whether it's CBSA's or ours, is an estimate because of the poor record keeping. I'll stop there.
Okay, so let me understand that correctly. The 19 million, the approximate 19 million you attribute to GC strategies. Are you saying that there is room to interpret that as being a combination of ArriveCan contracting and possibly other elements of contracting with the CBSA?
Yes, in our report, we did state that it is possible that some amounts attributed to ArriveCan were not for the application. And indeed, when CBSA provided information to the Government Operations Committee, there were some amounts in the records that they produced there that we didn't consider to be for ArriveCan, and there were amounts that we have considered to be for ArriveCan that CBSA disagrees with. Ultimately, though, we were confident enough with our estimate to put it in a report to Parliament.
Were you confident enough to say that that estimate could have been actually higher than 19 million?
It could have been higher and it could have been lower. I can't be precise. I mean, it is an estimate after all.
Okay. Notwithstanding the comments of both Firth and Anthony at committee several weeks after the release of the AG report, did you hear directly from Firth or Anthony prior to their testimony?
Prior to their testimony, we received a letter from them before we tabled our report.
Did they supply you with any additional documentation to verify their numbers, which were actually closer to 11 million?
Like I said, we received the letter. We built our estimate on the basis of the documentation and the financial system at CBSA, amongst other evidence.
But did they offer to supply you documentation in their possession which established the 11 million figure according to their records?
In their letter, they did offer to provide us information if we required it. However, I would say that, like I said, our estimate was based on not just what semantically some contractors are suggesting was the build for ArriveCan. It was for the entire picture of ArriveCan.
Thank you, Mr. Brock.
What kind of lessons that or topics that are covered in the mandatory retraining of staff at the CBSA as part of your response to the Auditor General's report?
So I think the first thing I would say is we have to look at the 2 or 3 lines of defence. So the first line of defence is based within the Information Science and Technologies branch. They were responsible for the ArriveCan app, for the development and operations of that application. We have over 1,600 delegated financial officers within the agency. Around about 900 of those are based in headquarters. Quite a large number of those individuals are based in the Border Technologies and Innovation Directorate, which was directly responsible for the development of the app and also for the contracting functions working with PSPC. So what we were doing there is looking at the failures of the first line of defence. And we have no doubt there were failures in the first line of defence in terms of governance, in terms of oversight, in terms of record keeping. And all of those things are lessons we have learned. They're also potentially subject to the investigations to look at whether there was any wrongdoing in some of those failures. We recognise that there were failures. We're not entirely sure exactly what the reason for those failures, whether they were because of the stress of the pandemic or whether there was any wrongdoing included in that. And we should wait for the investigations to conclude on that matter. The second line of defence is where the controllership branch is involved. And what we do every year, we take a sample of about 5,000 non-pay transactions and we look to see if they're being properly processed. On average, we find around about 9 to 10% of errors. That is not satisfactory to us. Our target is less than 5%. We were very disappointed to see the Auditor General's report, which identified 18% of those errors. We are looking into the reasons for that, and some of those reasons are because there wasn't a separate cost center code. So there was an administrative error in that the individual invoices were not being coded to the right account because we didn't have that separate code. So those were really the basic functions of the first line and the second line of defense.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. And to Mr. Hayes, are there any lessons learned here with respect to contracting within your own office with all of this coming to light?
Thank you. We take the contracting responsibilities at our office very seriously. We are rigorous with our contracting. What we have learned, though, from this audit and implemented in our office is more awareness around conflict of interest declarations, and I would say also increasing the awareness for all of our managers of the importance of making sure that documentation is kept in a very, very accurate way.
Mr. Vleeming, on GC Strategy's now deleted website, they had a number of testimonials from senior government officials. In one case, the Government of Canada Chief Information Officer was quoted as saying, quote, GC Strategies understands our needs on a business and technical level, end quote. Who would have said that?
Thank you for the question. I've only been at the CBSA for 11 months, so I was not CIO at the time. Prior to me, Min Doan was CIO over the last, I think, 5 years.
Has anyone asked Mr. Doan if that was him?
I am not aware of that.
Who else could it have been? So we've established it wasn't you?
If the reference was specifically to who was the Chief Information Officer of the CBSA in the last 5 years, that would have been Min Doan.
Okay, but it wasn't you that said it?
That's correct.
Are you aware that it was said?
I am
or
not
alleged to have been said? You're not familiar?
All I've heard is the testimony of committees that referencing that certain testimonials on the GC Strategies website.
And did it cause you concern that endorsement had been offered by the CIO?
It surprised me, as you wouldn't typically see that, at least in my experience.
In another example, the Chief Data Officer for the public sector said, quote, GC Strategies, see the bigger picture and do not chase the quick sale. Who would have said that?
I'm not actually aware of who the Chief Data Officer was at the time, sorry.
Has anyone tried to find out who said it?
I'm not part of the internal investigation, which I would assume is also going to be looking at that.
In another case, a Government of Canada senior executive said, quote, GC Strategies listen and try to find solutions to my problems versus selling me a solution to a problem I've never had. Who would have said that?
Not aware of that either.
So we don't know. Could it have been Min Doan?
It's impossible for me to answer that, as there's no details on who actually said that and what their position was.
I'm a bit surprised that even a basic level of curiosity wouldn't have encouraged you to find out if your predecessor, on an unnamed basis, but only using the title that you now have, had actually said something like that, and then now occupying that position would not have sought remediation, that is, for it to be taken down. Did you ask for it to be taken down by GC Strategies?
No, as far as I'm aware, it's certainly not against any rules or laws to put that up there, and I'm not sure the government has the ability to
But you could ask if it's not true. But
again, if it's not against the law, I'm not aware of them violating any rules by putting that up there. It's just not something I would typically expect.
So it's compliant with the values and ethics codes for the public service?
As far as I'm aware, that would be compliant with the values and ethics code.
Well, I can tell you, if someone who previously held my position said something that I fundamentally disagreed with, and it was attributed in current time by job title only, I'd at least ask the person who had it posted, because I value my reputation and think it's important to the integrity of the institution that I represent that things that are demonstrably false don't continue to stand. I would hope that people who represent in senior positions the Government of Canada on behalf of all Canadians would exercise that same basic due diligence, because we have let's be clear, this is a two-person shady company operating out of a basement that get paid tens of millions of dollars, and they're close enough. They're now alleging that they're close enough with the Liberal government senior officials that they're able to provide testimonials. I'm surprised that you'd be unaware that there hasn't been an investigation of that. Have you, sir, or the current CBSA executives had any contact with Christian Firth or Darren Anthony?
I have not met either of those.
Have you had contact with them?
No, never.
No phone calls, emails, text messages?
Nothing at all.
Okay. Mr. Moore, same question.
No, I've had no contact. No, I've had no contact at all with GC Strategies or any of their employees.
Do you know when the last contact with the person that previously occupied your position, Mr. Vleming, when Min Doan would have last contacted them?
I'm not aware of that specific date, no.
Mr. Moore, are you aware of their last contact with the agency?
No, but I know that we ceased paying them in June of 2023.
In June of 2023.
That's right.
Right. Nearly a year after concerns had been brought to the attention of CBSA
question, Mr.
through
Mayor.
the work of Conservatives at standing committees of Parliament. I have more questions for Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you to our witnesses for joining us here this morning. At a recent public accounts meeting, Danny Richard, president of the Canadian Financial Officers, testified that between the three departments in question here, there are over 1,000 members in those departments, including 5 members who flagged issues with management. But we understand that very few, perhaps a dozen of these financial officers were actually involved in this procurement process. Mr. Moore, are you concerned by this?
So I'm concerned by a number of the points Mr. Richard made, and I do regularly communicate with him. And I want to identify what more we can do to actually improve the financial manager organisation within the within CBSA. But, you know, sort of where we are in terms of the delegation of financial instruments is the majority of the controls are at the manager level, and we then have financial manager advisors who are engaged in the strategic financial management. They do not sign task authorizations, they do not sign invoices and Section 32 and Section 34 responsibilities. But if they identified wrongdoing or any issues associated with that, they would be responsible for bringing them forward to us.
Well, thankfully, there were problems identified and nothing happened, and I think that's on you, sir. I want to move on, though, but we know there are a number of current investigations ongoing in a number of venues, but most concerning is obviously the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, the Mounties. Our concern here is that Min Doan's emails have magically disappeared. The Chief Technology Officer couldn't save his emails, which is rather concerning, rather than perplexing, and I'm sure the RCMP are very intrigued and interested by that. I want to know from you, Mr. Moore, what are you doing to recover those emails?
So that is subject to an internal investigation and potentially also an RCMP investigation. I'm not privy to either of those investigations, so I can't comment on where they are. In terms of what we are doing to recover those emails, maybe I'll ask Mr. Vleming to explain.
Thank you. So this is actually being run by our internal investigation as well, including the recovery side of things to ensure there's no conflict of interest. And so I'm not aware of any more information, not privy to that internal investigation.
To you, Mr. Vleming, how easy is it to permanently delete all your emails without a trace?
It is actually surprisingly easy. The reality is that Shared Services Canada is accountable for email and the policies around that, and a person can choose to delete their emails. It is retained for 30 days where they can't permanently, and after that it is deleted.
Surprisingly easy. I am, quite frankly, shocked by the fact that the Government of Canada, with all the resources of the state behind it, cannot preserve the emails of someone in a position like Min Doan when there is a criminal investigation ongoing and these documents simply disappeared. I think that's incredibly concerning. I want to move on. Mr. Hayes, to you. In your opening comment, you echoed many of the concerns that were previously raised by yourself and by the Auditor General about lack of records, not having paper trails, just things not existing. We received a letter recently from the Department of Public Services and Procurement Canada, the supposed experts on procurement. And the Assistant Deputy Minister wrote this. On February 2nd, 2017, PSPC awarded a contract to GC Strategies for $24,977 through a supply arrangement for professional services to provide business and technical learning to PSPC employees using a new client relationship management system. A search of PSPC systems found references to the contract, including the total amount. However, the contract document itself was misplaced during a reorganization and relocation of hard copy files. So the department's supposed to be the experts on procurement is losing documents on procurement and on contracts. What's more, Treasury Board Secretariat, a central agency, wrote to us and said, on behalf of the Treasury Board Secretariat, we have a nil response to expanded motion is provided, nil response to GC Strategies, yet in the Public Accounts of Canada, it lists GC Strategies as having received an account or the contract for the Treasury Board Secretariat. So here we have two key agencies, neither of which can account for their own contracts with GC Strategies. Is that a concern from the Auditor General's office?
We would expect that proper books and records are kept on contracts and on payments made under those contracts for the full period of the retention periods required by law. So obviously there are times where hard copies might be misplaced, and it's important to find them. We've constantly made recommendations and findings about the importance of good record management and accurate data collection. So yes, I would express concern over the fact that contract documents can't be located.
Thank you very much. That's your time, Mr. Nader. Turn now to Ms. Bradford joining us virtually. You have the floor for up to 5 minutes, please, Ms. Bradford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the witnesses for joining us this morning. Getting back to the Executive Procurement Review Committee, who sits on that?
Ultimately,
At the CBSA,
Development of the arrived.
3.5 minutes to go, please. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
incredibly hard, whereas some of the traveller ones actually saw a very big reduction in the volume because of the volumes.
Was this the first time you've experienced
just one
in
second,
your role?
Mr. Viersen, I have a point of order. Yes, Ms. Yep.
I just would like the chair to remind those in the room not to take photos.
Oh.
Thank you.
I did not catch that. You are absolutely correct. There's
which was the executive committee. In the early hearing, concerns and no concerns were raised at our level. I think just for context of how the same procedure.
For 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. Mr. Moore, presumably your department has emergency planning in place. Would that be the case?
Yes. So we have a standing emergency plan which was utilised during the pandemic. As I've said earlier, we established 3 separate governance committees. We decided to split the operational crisis management committees into 2. The internal task force, which I chaired, and the border task force, which was chaired by the vice president of the Travellers branch. They both reported to the emergency management committee, which was the executive committee. In the early days, that committee met daily throughout, 24/7 essentially. Over time, that frequency of those meetings started to go down slightly. But it was definitely operating in an emergency management approach across the entire country, because also all of the individual regions were having to manage with a vast change in their approach to how they operated the border. A lot of the ports of entry, certainly the ones which were commercial, were operating incredibly hard, whereas some of the traveller ones actually saw a very big reduction in the volume because of the volumes.
Was this the first time you've experienced
just one
in
second,
your role?
Mr. Viersen, I have a point of order. Yes, Ms. Yep.
I just would like the chair to remind those in the room not to take photos.
Oh.
Thank you.
I did not catch that. You are absolutely correct. There should be no photos. I'm going to have the clerk check with you, Ms. Yip, as to who you spotted, and I will instruct the clerk to have them delete the photo or photos. If you would just check that, I'll keep running the meeting. Thank you, Ms. Yip. Turning now back to Mr. Viersen, you have 3.5 minutes to go, please. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Moore, in your time as in your position, is this the first time your department used this emergency planning procedure?
It uses it on a sort of sadly on two regular basis. So, for example, I think a few months ago where there was the tragic accident in the United States around Rainbow Bridge, the Southern Ontario region had to bring in their emergency planning for that, especially during the period when it could have been considered to be a terrorist attack. So any operational activity at the border, we will bring in our emergency management procedures.
Okay, so this is not the first time that this has happened. It seems unique then that there would be a general COVID fund. Was that unique?
So it was unique, but it was also a product of what we were having to do. So, for example, we had to increase the cleaning of our ports of entry and to do it twice a day rather than once a day. We had to secure, with the help of a public health agency and PSPC, all of the PPE. We had to buy sanitization cabinets to allow the officers to actually steam, clean their tools and things like that. So lots of different things.
It was a very broad fund.
It was a very broad fund covering a number of different activities.
Okay, so you would say like a COVID slush fund.
It was definitely not a COVID slush fund. It was an emergency management fund. And in the first year, we provided $5 million to the Information Science and Technology branch to partially cover their costs of the first year of the Arrive Can app.
From soup to nuts, you could put that in that fund, or it was basically an expense account.
Well, it was an emergency management committee decision. So all decisions went to the emergency management committee who decided what they were going to be funding with that money.
Okay. What kind of oversight did the minister have of that particular fund?
So the minister had no oversight on that because we were taking this money from our operational funding. So when the minister has oversight when the mains estimates are agreed or when supplementary estimates are agreed, but that would be the only time the minister would have oversight.
Would he have known about this COVID slush fund?
He certainly would not. He probably would not have known about the emergency management fund, but I can't comment on whether the president at that time referred to it.
So from protective gloves, masks, cleaning equipment to IT sourcing, that would have all gone through the same funding?
Yes, and in the first year it was about $20 million in total.
And so you can see how the Auditor General would have had a challenge in dissecting this particular slush fund.
Well, I think I do, and I said at the start, we did not have a separate code for all the different activities. It did all go into this fund, and we learned that lesson. That was a mistake. We should have set up separate codes at the start, but I'm afraid that is part of a problem of being able to identify exactly where the funding went to.
Hence, the conclusion that this was a slush fund rather than an emergency management fund. Mr. Chair, I think that's my time. Thank you very much.
I move that when the committee undertakes to invite witnesses, that a witness list submission deadline be set by the chair with the explicit consent of the committee, that witnesses be invited proportionately to each recognized party standing in the House, and that no such witness be invited without proper instruction of the committee. Chair, I have that motion that can be delivered to all members forthwith.
Thank you, Ms. Shannon. Have you delivered it to the clerk in both official languages?
I believe so. Let me just check.
I'm just going to suspend. I'm just going to huddle with the clerk for a second then. But in the meantime, if you could check, please. Ms. Shannon, I'm going to take this as you are tabling this motion. It does not, I'll come back to you in a second. I will allow you to respond. It does not, it is in the broad category of committee business, which of course is acceptable, but does not pertain to the business at hand with this ongoing meeting. You are welcome to respond to that. We of course can pick it up. I am willing to, I am willing to seek additional time on Tuesday if you do. If you're in agreement, but you go ahead, please, Ms. Shanahan.
Chair, I am moving this motion.
So I'm going to move it out of order, It does not, and I'll explain why. It does not pertain to the business at hand. It is a broad motion with respect to how this committee can operate, and of course we could pick it up next week. And as an alternative to members, I propose we finish off today's meeting with witnesses we have, and then we deal with this motion early next week. Ms. Shanahan, you still have two minutes.
I challenge that decision, Mr. Chair.
Very good. We'll have a vote then.
Shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Bradford.
I vote against.
Mr. Van Bynen.
I vote against.
Ms. Khalid.
I vote no.
Ms. Shanahan.
No.
Ms. Yip.
No.
Mr. Nader.
Yes.
Mr. Brock.
Yes.
Mr. Viersen.
Yes.
Madame Saint-Clair Desgagnés.
Oui.
Mr. Desjardins.
Against.
Five nays, 5 yeas.
Mr. Desjardins, can you just confirm your vote? Are you voting to uphold my ruling, or are you voting to have this motion accepted and we will move into debate on this motion?
I'll accept the motion.
So you are moving to debate this motion
Against.
right now?
Yeah.
Very good.
Exactly.
Very good. All right. The committee has overruled the chair, and we are going to debate this motion. Mr. Viersen, you're up first, it looks like. Over to you, please.
So I find it quite surprising that that this motion is coming from Ms. Shanahan in particular today, that demanding that there would be equal representation of witnesses and based on party allocation and things like that. So I'm surprised. I don't think that that is the spirit of this committee. And I would vote against this motion. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Looking at the motion, I do believe that it's important, particularly for my party and our smaller representation in this committee, to be able to have input on our witness list. So I'd be happy to dispose of this as when you can in order for us to return to the witnesses.
We want to work with you, Chair, and so I'm really hoping that all members of this committee can support this motion, because it is important to how we function as a nonpartisan, multi-partisan committee that cares about the public.
You know, Chair, I'm old enough to remember when parliamentary secretaries weren't supposed to be on committees. That was the Liberal platform promise, but here we are with the Liberal parliamentary secretary carrying water for the PMO and the Liberal National Caucus chair moving this motion. Obviously, they're not happy with the damning testimony they're hearing about incompetence and corruption within the government related to Arrive scam.
I would raise a point of order, Chair, but I think I'll let it pass.
But you didn't.
Obviously, there's no point of order, because there is no point of order that Ms. Khalid can raise, because obviously what they're doing is trying to disrupt the work of this committee and getting the bottom of Arrive scam. So I look forward to this motion being passed in every single Liberal-chaired committee as well. And it's unfortunate the Liberals don't have the dedication to log on to Zoom for 2 hours during a constituency week. I know here on the Conservative side we're ready to do the work on behalf of Canadians.
We're on autopilot when it comes to witnesses. We have the auditor and the subjects of the audits. So is this are you talking kind of extraordinary meetings? How do you propose that works, given the typical work that this committee does? And no such witness be invited without instruction of the committee. So are you saying, does this kind of negate that they're proportional? Would the committee have to approve all witnesses, or if whatever ratio is agreed to, say 4-2 and 1-1, the witnesses can be invited, or do all witnesses have to be approved by the committee? And so giving a some members the ability to veto witnesses that a party might want to hear from. Could you respond to those, please, to give the clerks some...
Chair, you're an experienced member, and I think and many of us have sat on other committees, so we know that when we are faced with a study where where the committee has already agreed that we're going to undertake that study, and we are inviting witnesses outside the normal scope of public accounts is a committee where we have sort of our guaranteed witnesses, which is the Auditor General and the officials of the department that are directly concerned. And so it is because it has come about in this session of Parliament that we are being confronted with the unilateral invitation of witnesses outside of our normal functioning that we want to see. This motion speaks to the practice that other committees have, which is that there's consultation with the members and that the chair proceeds in consultation with the members, with the added caveat that in public accounts, it's been the normal practice that this be done by consensus, but at least that we had that consultation done en bonne due forme, as we say. So I think the motion is clear, and I, for one, am ready to vote on it.
Very good. Ms. Khalid, you have the floor. Then I'll have another question. Over to you, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I just wanted to add to everything that Ms. Shanahan has said, which I 100% agree with. There is no veto power, as is with all committees. Every party submits their witness list, and those witnesses are invited to come and appear before the committee. We're not talking about, whether a party can veto. This is not the United Nations Security Council. We are trying to be as inclusive as possible here. And so I don't anticipate any veto power. I think that members should be given the opportunity to be able to invite witnesses in a consensus format and to be able to have a heads up and to have some say and some consultation in when meetings are held. We all lead very, very busy lives within our constituencies, doing the important work for our constituents and in Parliament and with this committee as well. So we want to be able to build that consensus and to work together. Chair, this is really the purpose of the motion.
I'm serious about this. How do you see this motion? So the subcommittee had a meeting and laid out priorities, and there was broad agreement there was broad opposition agreement to continue the ArriveCAN study. If this motion passes, do you see that this is immediate and tomorrow's meeting needs to be rescheduled, and we need to bring forward, and the same thing for next week? That we're going to put a freeze on the work that the clerk and the work the clerk has done to arrange it under my instructions based on what I had received coming out of the subcommittee meeting. Could you respond to those two? How you see this motion? Is this an immediate or a go forward?
This is a go forward, Chair, and I'm ready to vote on the motion. I think we all understand. I'm not going to prejudge what other members say. We're ready to vote. All
right. That's very, very helpful, Ms. Shanahan. That's helpful. Mr. Barrett, you have the floor.
Yeah, Chair. It's beyond parody that the Liberals want to be able to call rebuttal witnesses to the Auditor General of Canada. So we see that this is a Liberal cover-up. They're trying to cover up their $60 million Arrive scam.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Let's go to a vote. If they're not comfortable with what's happening in their government.
I have a point of order, then I'll return the floor to you, Mr. Barrett. Yes, Ms. Khalid, you have the floor.
I find exception to us being blamed.
Ms. Khalid, that is a point of debate. Witnesses. I will give you the floor after Mr. Barrett is done, and you're welcome to have a rebuttal. Mr. Barrett, you have the floor again.
Yeah, Chair. The Liberals, including Ms. Khalid, should vote for their cover-up and to be able to bring rebuttal witnesses to the Auditor General when they don't like the news that's reported on in this massive corruption scandal. So I'd be interested to see who they'd bring out. I guess they'll bring Christian Firth as their expert witness to rebut the Auditor General. We believe Ms. Hogan. We understand they believe Mr. Firth. So let's have a vote.
Thank you. Ms. Jip, you have a point of order, or is it a point of debate? Because I do have Ms. Khalid on that. Thank you. Ms. Khalid, I've said I'd put you down. Do you have anything to add? All right. Seeing no other interveners, Clerk, could you please call the vote?
Shall the motion of Ms. Shanahan carry? Ms. Bradford?
In favor.
Mr. Van Bynen?
In favor.
Ms. Khalid?
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan?
Yes.
Ms. Yip?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
No.
Mr. Brock?
No.
Mr. Vierson?
No.
Madame Saint-Claude Desgagnés?
No.
Mr. Desjardins?
Yes.
6 yeas, 4 nays.
Very good. The motion is carried. I will, of course, follow it. Attorney General, we're going to finish up our rounds. I apologize for the delay to our witnesses. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor for 2 minutes and about 10 seconds.
Point of order, Chair.
Just 1 second. Ms. Shanahan. Yes, Mr. Brock.
Given the unnecessary intervention that lasted close to 45 minutes, do we have resources beyond 12 o'clock?
Well, I am going to work on that right now. So,
thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Moore, I am so grateful you're actually part of a panel with the Auditor General. In fact, you're sitting right next to Mr. Hayes, the Deputy Attorney General, Auditor General, I should say. Now, last week, about a week ago, exactly a week ago, I asked you a question. You couldn't answer the question. I want to know why you deliberately, your agency, the CBSA, not you personally, why the CBSA deliberately misled and lied to the Auditor General when saying that GC Strategies actually provided a proposal for the initial contract to work with the CBSA. That's what the CBSA confirmed to the Auditor General. The Auditor General confirmed that, in fact, that was false. So here's your opportunity to come clean to Canadians and to members of this committee. You, as a representative of the CBSA, why did you mislead the Auditor General?
So as a representative of the CBSA, I do not believe the CBSA did mislead the Auditor General. There were different choices at that time, and one of the choices was to have an in-house developed project using staff augmentation, which is the GC Strategies.
I'll stop you right there. Are you suggesting the Auditor General simply got it wrong? They looked for a proposal on the initial contract with CBSA that you said you had in your possession from GC Strategies, and they confirmed it wasn't there.
Well, I think what you're referring to is missing documentation, which I think has been subject to a number of different inquiries. Lots of different people have been looking for the documentation, and that is also part of the investigation to see whether the documentation is missing because of COVID or because of some other reason.
GC Strategy, specifically Mr. Firth, when he attended a few weeks ago, refused to answer questions regarding his involvement in the $25 million IT service contract, stating that responding to that question would somehow jeopardize the RCMP investigation. So we know through the Auditor General's report that I'm sure that you have read that GC, Government of Canada Strategies, was directly involved in the drafting the narrow terms of that $25 million IT service contract.
Point of order,
Just 1 second,
Chair.
Mr. Brock. Yes, Ms. Shanahan?
Yeah, it's just on this Government of Canada that Mr. Brock is referring to. Is this an official name? I'm just
that's not a
it's
point.
GC Strategies.
Ms. Shanahan, that's not a point of order. If the witness is seeking clarity, they're entitled to ask, but not members. Mr. Brock, I don't know if you want to ask your question again. I'll give you time if you do. So
that's fine.
Please do.
For Ms. Shanahan's benefit, it was actually Mr. Firth himself who confirmed that the GC stands for Government of Canada. Not my words. Your witness, Ms. Shanahan, Mr. Firth. So, Mr. Firth, through GC Strategies, created their own terms, drafted their own contract, which surprisingly they actually won. 25 million tax dollars, Canadian taxpayer dollars. Who at CBSA allowed that to happen?
Well, I think, as I've said previously, it is unacceptable for.
No, sir. I know it's unacceptable. Everyone knows it's unacceptable. You're the one responsible. You're accountable for this mess. You're accountable for failures. Now provide us some answers. Who at the CBSA, I want names and I want positions, allowed Government of Canada Strategies to draft their own contract worth 25 million taxpayer dollars? Name, sir.
Well, that is, as I've said before, it's the Board of Technologies and Innovation Directorate which were responsible for that.
Give me a name. Not a department, give me a name.
Well, the DG is Mr. MacDonald, and the Executive Director was Mr. Utano. They were responsible for drafting that statement of work.
Are you saying it was Mr. MacDonald and Mr. Utano who allowed GC Strategies to write their own contract? Is that your evidence?
I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that's what
that's the question I'm putting to you, sir. How more simpler can I phrase it?
Chair.
Who at CBSA allowed this to happen?
I've taught Miss Khalid. What is your point of order?
With the years of experience we've had, we treat our witnesses with a little bit more respect than what Mr. Brock is treating our witnesses as right now.
That is not a point of order. Mr. Brock is trying to get an answer and is becoming, I think, rightly frustrated the way a lot of Canadians are. Mr. Brock, you have the floor again.
Mr. Moore, let's not play games. The question is simple. Who, give me a name, at CBSA allowed Government of Canada Strategies to write their own contract, which they won, $25 million. Give me names, please.
Well, I think as I've already given you names, but they're...
And I asked you. You gave me names. You gave me Mr. MacDonald and Mr. Utano. I asked you, are they responsible for allowing GC to write the contract? You said no. So the question now is, sir, who at CBSA allowed it?
I said I do not know because it is under investigation, and that is a key part of investigation internally.
How could you not know?
Point of order
How could
again,
you not
Mr.
know,
Chair.
sir?
Just 1 second, Mr. Brock. Yes, Miss Khalid.
This is a point of order on decorum. The witness has said time and time again he does not know there is ongoing investigations. Why are we badgering a witness?
Again, that is not a point of order, Chair.
That is absolutely a point of order, Chair. This is about decorum.
Miss Khalid, Mr. Brock's question was simple. Why don't you know? That's what that was his question. It seems to be a valid question. You might not like how it's posed.
I'm so sorry, Chair. I didn't know you became an agent for the Conservatives there, but
He's a Conservative MP.
To be fair, he's also the chair of this committee, which begs of him to be nonpartisan in his deliberations in how we operate as a committee. Yes, it does.
Yes, Ms. Khalid,
yes, it does.
And I'll point out I've had my share of Conservative MPs who have whinged at some of the decisions I've made as well. So when I get it from both sides, I find myself right in the position I need to be. Ms. Khalid, Mr. Brock has the floor. His question was, why don't you know? That question is in order. Mr. Brock, you have about 40 seconds left.
So you can ask for 6 minutes the same question.
Okay, hold on. Miss Khalid, the more you talk, the more time. I'm going to start. The more you talk, the more time Mr. Brock has, because you're running into his time to get questions going back and forth. So, Mr. Brock, you have the floor for 40 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. And I won't be silenced by Ms. Khalid or Ms. Shanahan or anyone on that Liberal bench, because these are relevant questions that Canadians want to know an answer to. So I'll ask it again for the 5th time, sir. Why do you not know who in particular allowed GC to write the terms of their own contract, given your position at the CBSA? And the question can go to Mr. Vleming as well. Why do you not know?
So actually, Mr. Hayes has helped me with the chronology in that Mr. MacDonald actually left the CBSA on the 23rd of April 2021, and the first competitive contract awarded to GC Strategies was on the 16th of May 2022. It is still subject to review of the independent of the investigations. once that has
The investigation run by Mr. LaFleur.
Mr. Brock, your time is up.
The
I'm
RCMP
afraid
are
I
also
will
looking at this issue.
I will come back to your bench. Ms. Khalid, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And to our witnesses, what steps have you taken to ensure that this does not happen again? And, you know, I think Canadians, all parliaments, members of parliament realize that this is not something that should have happened at all. So can you just outline for us what steps you've taken to make sure that this does not happen again?
Thanks so much for the question. And I think, you know, I just want to reiterate, I am very disappointed this has happened. I think there is the fact that the COVID pandemic was ongoing at the time, and so therefore some of our internal controls were not operating as effective as it could be. What I've said before, the first line of defense, what we are doing is all 900 people with delegation of financial signing authorities have been retrained. That's 16 and a half hours of training everyone has been undertaken to remind them of what their responsibilities are in terms of contracting.
So, Mr. Moore, it's going to be incredible, if not impossible, for Canadians to believe that CBSA has no idea who authorized GC Strategies to ink the requirements for a $25 million contract and then get awarded that same contract, and nobody knows. Nobody knows, and you offered some names. Then, when pressed by Mr. Brock on if those names were those responsible, you said, "Well, no, that's not what I'm saying." But you're not able or willing to tell us who. And then Mr. Hayes tells you that one of those individuals wasn't even there. So it's hard to believe. So, in any other business, in any other environment, there would be serious repercussions. You said, sir, on ArriveCan that you are, quote, you said, "I'm accountable for failures," end quote. These are massive failures, the likes of which have not been seen in decades in this country. Have you offered to resign?
No, I've not offered to resign because I'm actually very proud of what we've achieved over the last 6 years.
That's shameful. There's nothing to be proud of in this. And I would, if I had time, I'd dig into the supposed cost savings. But the paper-based applications, those were human costs.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes, Ms. Shanahan, point of order, please.
Again, the shameful treatment of our witnesses who are
She's using the same word I used.
Actually, it is the decorum in committee. It is Standing Order 117.
So she's calling it shameful,
and Chair,
but I said shameful.
I call upon you to ensure the respectful treatment of
she's using the same word,
the witnesses that appear before us today.
So, Ms. Shanahan, your point of order is that you're entitled to call a member shameful as actions, but the member cannot refer to the statements from a witness as shameful?
I am saying that the words that the member
you use the same word, Brenda,
with the witness, it's in questioning a witness, is not appropriate. It is inappropriate to this committee.
Your cover-up is inappropriate.
Ms. Shanahan,
a civil servant to call upon a civil servant to resign and then to say that is shameful. That is not worthy of this committee. We are here to ensure the accountability of civil servants, and we take that work very
Ms. Shanahan, okay.
very
Ms. Shanahan, first, you know, it is my practice both to give members latitude to ask their questions and I think more unique for this committee to allow witnesses to respond fully, and I seldom cut them off because I think it is a benefit for this committee to hear answers. But Ms. Shanahan, one of the issues before this committee is the lack of answers that have come from the Government of Canada about who is responsible. I am tired of hearing that we will fix it next time, when this is about the auditor's report finding out what happened. You might not like the tone that Mr. Baird is using, but it is entirely appropriate. And I suspect a good part of the country agrees. Now, don't bring me into this debate with these frivolous points of order on tone, particularly when you take issue with the word Mr. Barrett used and then use it yourself to describe his actions, thereby reinforcing the point it is accurate. Mr. Barrett, you have the floor.
Chair?
Is it a point of order, Ms. Khalid?
Yes, Chair. I, again, on the same point of order on decorum,
He
I
ruled
would
on it.
appreciate
He ruled on
if
it.
the chair, I'm talking about a different person now, if the chair himself could be a little bit more nonpartisan in how he conducts
Okay,
our
Ms. Khalid, don't bring me into your bun fights, and I will be nonpartisan and conduct the meeting. You're going to continue to disrupt opposition members from asking questions, then I will get involved and make a ruling, as is my job. I'm not just a potted plant up here that's going to watch the clock. But as you get more political and try to cut opposition members from asking legitimate committee questions, I will reinforce their rights as members to ask it. Mr. Barrett, you have the floor for 3 minutes, 40 seconds, please.
My colleague Eric Duncan asked you last week, Mr. Moore, which CBSA executives involved in ArriveCan received performance bonuses, and you said, quote, I can't confirm if they received bonuses this year because the year is not actually at an end, end quote. Well, year end has come and gone. Which executives and how much?
So I'm not able to answer that question because I'm not responsible for executives' performance bonuses.
Well, that wasn't your answer last week, sir. You said that you weren't able to provide the answer because the year end hadn't come, not that you weren't responsible for it. So let me ask you a question with precision that you will be able to answer. Did you, sir, receive bonuses for your work?
I think, as I said last week, I did receive some performance pay during the periods when while I've been the CFO. But also I want to come back to your previous question, actually, with respect.
So $60 million $60 million in waste, along with allegations of fraud, forgery, and corruption. And this Arrive scam sees executives like yourself taking bonuses. You said, and I quote, I'm accountable for failures, end quote. You said that today. Where is the accountability? So everyone keeps their job, everyone gets a bonus, and Canadians are on the hook for all of it, for tens of millions of dollars. And the supposed cost savings of paper versus this application, well, those paper costs were human costs. All of those humans are still being paid. These were costs on top of it. And so much of it, tens of millions of dollars of it, are grift, are just liberal insiders getting rich while Canadians get hammered and have to pick up the bill. And so it's egregious. It's egregious is what it is. I have a question for the Deputy Auditor General. In your report on page 5, there's a table. It's Exhibit 1.1, estimated costs of the main contractors on the ArriveCan application at 31 March 2023. Of course, this details the $19.1 million that GC Strategies received that, of course, they deny getting paid. And of course, CBSA has no concept on how any of the contracts awarded to these two grifters were awarded. But at the bottom of that table, there's a line, other, and it's $6.1 million. Obviously, the big numbers draw a lot of attention, that $19 million. But this $6.1 million. So Canadians are now wondering how much of this corruption exists in the system and what makes up these companies. Are there numbered companies involved? Because we need to understand who it is that's getting rich off of this project that, of course, Border Service officers said was absolutely ineffective and prevented them from fulfilling their responsibilities. And we've heard that from their union representatives and directly from BSOs themselves. So that's $6.1 million. Who makes up that list?
So we didn't include the details in our report. All of those companies, contractors, received less than $1 million. That was the cutoff that we used for the table. As we said in the footnotes to the table, there were 21 contractors. We haven't notified those contractors of the fact that we would name them in the report. We didn't name them, but there were 21. So we're talking from the low dollar values up to at the high end, possibly $1 million.
Are you able to furnish the committee with a list of those contractors?
We do have a list of those names, and we can provide it to the committee.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the work of the Auditor General's office.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. That is your time. Ms. Shipp, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, you weren't given an opportunity to finish answering Mr. Barrett's question. Would you like to take this opportunity to provide an answer?
Yes, thank you very much. And I think, as I've said before, it would be totally unacceptable for a contractor to be involved in drafting up a request for proposals for a contract which they then bid for. And under the procurement rules, you can use a contractor for technical reasons, but they then have to exclude themselves from making a bid for that contract, and it has to be disclosed. So if wrongdoing is found, and my answer to the question is I do not know, because I have not been involved in any of those internal investigations, and I'm certainly not involved in the RCMP investigation. If wrongdoing is found in any case of any of these contracting approaches, then action will be taken. That's what I'm assuring. But I can't say at this moment a name because I do not know a name. Well, what Mr. Hayes did help me with was just to remind me of the chronology around who was involved in the Board of Technologies and Innovation Directorate, and I do accept that chronology. So I apologise to Mr. MacDonald by mentioning him when clearly, he was not there at that time.
So you have not been approached by the RCMP?
I have not been approached by the RCMP at all.
Mr. Moore, could you confirm for us how many employees of CBSA are currently actively engaged in outside employment or contracting?
I cannot confirm that number, but I can ask the CBSA to come back to you with a number because that would be the Human Resources branch.
So you're telling me you came to this committee meeting unprepared to answer that question, given the fact that this has been a topic of discussion for some weeks?
My understanding is that there has been a question raised and they will be giving a response. And they are now doing a check of everybody to make sure that they have a full disclosure before they come up with a definitive number.
Are you personally aware of any employees within CBSA who have outside employment or outside contracts?
So I personally was involved in a conflicts of interest discussion last year for one of my employees who was proposing to take on an unpaid role, and actually we perceived that to be a conflict of interest, and it went through the standard process. So the evidence was gathered by our Human Resources branch. We discussed the process with the individual concerned, and actually the decision was that they decided to withdraw from that because there was at least a perceived conflict of interest. So I am aware of the process which is being operated, but it's operated by our Human Resources branch.
On the other side, are you aware of any contracts currently at CBSA which involve employees from other government departments?
So we, as a result of the investigations which are ongoing, we have done some searches of GEDs. We have identified some individuals who are in GEDs, which would, if you're in GEDs, it implies you're an employee of another government department. And we have therefore contacted those departments and worked through each of those individuals. I think it was around about 6 or 7 individuals, and the Director General responsible for that has confirmed with the other government department that there was no conflict in those cases. However, that work is ongoing.
So I just want to stop you for a second. You say there was no conflict, but they are in fact government employees who have contracts with CBSA. Is that correct? Can you confirm that there are government employees, public servants, at other departments who currently have active contracts with the Canada Border Services Agency? Are you confirming that, yes or no?
So I cannot confirm that, but we can get back to you with the details of that individual.
Sir, I'm going to stop you right there. You said that they were checked in GEDs. They confirmed with the departments and the Director General that they were in fact employees of those departments. You said 6 or 7 of them, but now you're unwilling to confirm that?
No, what I'm saying is 6 or 7 were checked, but I do know for a fact that some of those were inappropriately on GEDs. They had actually resigned and moved elsewhere.
So of those 6 or 7, how many of them are Government of Canada employees with contracts at CBSA?
So I do not have that details, but I can.
Sir, you just said there were 6 or 7. It's a small number, and you tell me you can't confirm one way or the other?
I can't confirm because it wasn't in my area, but we can.
Sir, you are the Chief Financial Officer of the CBSA. You came here knowing that this would be a topic of discussion. You're unable to tell us this information, yet you seem to have this information of the process that happened. You seem to have the information that these checks were done, but you can't tell us what actually happened?
I'm willing to come back to you on the level of details for these individuals.
Okay, sir, obviously there's been a process undertaken. This information is obviously at hand. Can you confirm and provide that information to this committee by the close of business today?
I'll have to go back to the department to see if I have it.
Could you make the endeavour that you'll try to do that by close of business
today? I will
today?
go back to the department and talk to the DG who was responsible for this.
Your non-answers are frankly surprising.
Let me just interject, Mr. Nader. I appreciate the information will be forthcoming as soon as possible. Mr. Nader, the committee does allow for some time. I appreciate your determination to get to the bottom of this, but Mr. Moore, if you're able to, that's wonderful. But as soon as possible, and we will reach out at some point. Mr. Nader, back to you for a minute.
Because there may also be some privacy impact, which I can't comment on.
Again, privacy is not an issue. As you well know, sir, this Parliament and this committee can compel information from witnesses at any degree, and privacy and any of those issues are not impediments to providing information. This committee, and you as a senior public servant, ought to know the powers of committees to call for information and documents. On a different matter, 3 information technology contractors were found to have fraudulently billed for contract work with several departments between 2018 and 2022. These payments were estimated to be nearly $5 million. You were asked this question by my colleague, Mr. Brock, in a previous committee. Can you now confirm whether any of those firms did work with the Canada Border Services Agency?
So, as I said at the previous committee appearance, the Public Services and Procurement Canada informed us that the CBSA was involved, and the involvement were estimated up to $15,000. They have not come back and given us the details yet.
When do you expect that information to be forthcoming?
I'll have to go back to PSPC and ask them.
So the exact same answer you basically gave a week and a half ago.
Well, I think we have had the Easter period in between.
Yes, we did have two days there that were
10 seconds,
statutory holidays. Chair, I will just conclude by saying I look forward to that information on double dipping coming to this committee as expeditiously as possible, because it is a concern for many Canadians.